Hi guys. So I wanted to talk about backyard farming, urban farming, suburban farming, all that kind of stuff. That's what I want to talk about right now. Ideally, that is honestly what I wish I was doing. Don't get me wrong, I love where I am. I love our land. I love that we have a big enough space for our kids to be able to play and run and scream, and that we can grow so much more food than we could if we were in the city. However, I grew up on a farm, a 12-acre farm, that was a subsistence farm. We didn't sell anything, and we had cows and goats and sheep and everything else. And it was a huge amount of work. It was an enormous amount of work, and you had to have expensive equipment, and you had to put in expensive fences, and you had to have expensive barns. I guess you didn't have to, but if you want to be able to use that much property, you have to have the infrastructure to be able to use it efficiently, and infrastructure is expensive. So when Mr. Dirt and I got married, I felt very strongly that I wanted my family to be able to eat good food. And I didn't believe that the organic labels and all that kind of thing really meant much, because my major is environmental science. I graduated from University of Idaho, and I'm a conservative environmentalist. I don't believe in government control of everything. I believe in people being able to govern themselves in order to not do damage to their neighbors. I'm very common law that way. I believe that the way that you monitor is that you don't damage the people around you. You don't be negligent. It's not that you need to have the government come in and play Big Brother. But anyway, so when we got married, I was just writing up my senior thesis, and it was about food miles and the amount of energy and fuel that goes into a pound of food, depending on what kind of food it is. Like with lettuce and stuff, it has to have refrigeration. With live animals, you have the terror, the amount of terror these animals feel being stuffed in these carts and shipped long miles, and how can they be healthy, and anyway, that's what my senior thesis was about food miles and about the quality of our food if it has to travel so far. So when we first got married, I found this book, The Backyard Homestead by Story Publishing, and it sang to my heart, because when I was in college, I really missed my goats. I still went riding a lot. It was my way to stay in contact with animals, and that's a big part of my soul, is to have a lot of animals around me. But I really missed my goats. I'd had goats since I was, well, let's see, I was 9 when I got my first bum lamb, and then I think I was 10 or 11 when I got my first milk goat. And since then, my life is just not complete without goats. They just are what make up part of my spiritual nature, I guess. I don't know how else to put it. But when I read this, it said that on very, very small acreage, you could be an efficient farmer. And so that's what I started doing. I had a tenth of an acre, and that was our whole plot, was a tenth of an acre. Our house was 600 square feet, and every inch of our backyard and front yard I put into gardens. We had meat rabbits, we had egg-laying chickens, and we got ducks at one point, but ducks are very noisy, and so we ended up not keeping the ducks just because of our neighbors. And then towards the end, I found Nigerian dwarf goats. And the way that our code read in our city was that as long as a pet was under 50 pounds, you could keep them. And so I found goats that were under 50 pounds, and they were very quiet, and I brought them home, and I had 2 milk goats in my backyard. I did have a privacy fence so my neighbors couldn't see, and I had 2 milk goats in my little tiny backyard. And I had deep bed mulch, and I had amazing sunflowers and corn and peas and pumpkins and stuff like that. And I felt like I had really come home to that because it was a small space, and it meant I could always push myself to do better. I couldn't push myself to be bigger because I had a very limited amount of space, but my efficiency and my learning there was huge. I had 2 peach trees that were started from seedlings, that were seeds. They were not, what's the word? They were not grafted. And they were grown from seeds from a tree that had grown in the town we were in, which was Idaho Falls. So it was used to the cold weather. It was acclimated. And we still go there once a year and harvest peaches from the people that live there now. And they're good peaches. And the tree is full of peaches. It does much, much, much better than our grafted peaches that we've planted here in this house. I also had a lovely, fantastic cherry tree that is enormous now. It must be close on to 25 feet tall now, and it's beautiful. I had grapevines and raspberry bushes, and the owner that came in after us tore those out, which was sad to me because they were bearing, and I thought they were lovely, but he didn't like the mess. So anyway, but he left the peach trees and the cherry tree, and I also planted elderberries and aronia berries. Well, let's see what else. Lemon balm and large rosehip roses and rhubarb and horseradish. And then in the front I had a mint bed with borage, and I had quite a few tomatoes and cucumbers that I had planted up in the front yard. And then I had honeyberry and kiwi planted in the front. So I had a huge amount of wonderful food that I had planted in that garden, and because of the windbreak that the city itself created, I had a microclimate there. I was much warmer there than I am here, and more sheltered, and I could spend more time gardening, and I had such a small place to maintain that it was really doable to have these farm animals. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, for those of you who don't have space, don't despair. You can make it beautiful. So that's why I wanted to talk about my 2 favorite, one is a blog and one is a YouTube channel. First one is Garden Girl. Her name is Patty Marino. Patty Marino, the Garden Girl. And she is in Boston, I believe. I think Boston. And she has a really nice backyard that was concrete. She didn't even have dirt. And what she ended up doing was building raised beds with inside frames. And then she built cages over the top of her raised beds, and she would put her chickens and her Angora rabbits and her regular meat rabbits inside these covered raised beds to fertilize her raised beds. So each raised bed had rabbits and chickens in it for a certain amount of the year so that it would fertilize that bed. And it was beautiful. And she has these amazing trellises, and she has fruit trees that she planted in there. And she really, really inspired me. And I loved how streamlined everything was. She made it so that everything was the same size. Everything had the same size cage. She had a little wheelbarrow that she wheeled through to feed all her animals so that it was all in a wheelbarrow. She wasn't having to walk back and forth. And I just love her. I love her perspective. I love that she's beautiful. She has a very attractive, sexy persona. She's not somebody that is just kind of slouching around in sweatpants all day, which when I first started farming, I thought it was okay to do that and to not necessarily take time to take care of myself in a day, that really all I was a farmer. But she really showed me that you can really be beautiful and sexy and a farmer and a gardener and all these things, and I love that about her. She's a very beautiful woman. And so she is my absolute favorite because she's in the same kind of climate as I am. Now the Gervais family, they are in Pasadena, California, and they actually make a living off of their property. Sorry if you can hear that audio book in the background. I'll try and talk louder. So the Gervais family, it's D-E-R-V-A-E-S, I believe, Gervais family. And they started out on a farm in New Zealand that was a real big farm, and then they had a family tragedy. something happened and they ended up moving to the US, to California, and he had this big backyard. And he just decided to turn it into a garden because he found out that how much of the current day corn was GMO, and he was afraid of what it would do to his children if they ate it. So he started this garden, and they are, I don't think you could call them vegetarians because they eat eggs and drink milk and that kind of thing, but they don't eat meat. So them I also don't quite resonate with as much because I believe strongly in good animal fats in your diet, and we do butcher our animals. But they have pygmy goats, and they don't milk them, but they keep them for manure and for company. They love them, they're pets. And they have this lovely sanctuary built for their goats in this backyard, and where the goats can run and play, and it is like a cage, but they've got all sorts of fun things for the goats to play with. They have chickens, they have ducks. I don't think they have rabbits. But they also have some raised beds, and they use those ceramic, they use those terracotta pots that you put in the dirt, you fill them with water, and then the water seeps through the terracotta because it's unglazed, and it seeps to the roots of the plants. And they're very careful about water, but they make a living off of their property selling greens and such because they plant very intensively. They have honeybees, and they make their own biodiesel. So I think that's Little Farm in the City, I think is what it's called. I think that's their store, and we have purchased things from them before. That's where we got our little open air solar dehydrator, was from their store. And they also have like the hand crank blenders and stuff like that, and the hand washing laundry machines that you use a hand and a paddle to do. But again, they're in California, so yes, their growing season is year round because they can do greens in the winter. But I just want to really encourage you guys to look into ways to do it. Oh, I wanted to show you. I totally forgot. Okay. So, I've talked before about Angora rabbits and that I had them. So, I have always been a spinner since I was probably 9. And when we were in our place in Idaho Falls, I found Angora rabbits for $20 a piece. Giant German Angoras for 20 bucks a piece up in Bellevue. There was a Waldorf school where the kids had accidentally let the mom and dad play together for 2 minutes, I swear. That's what he said on the phone. For 2 minutes, I swear. That's the only amount of time they were in there. And anyway, so he's selling them for $20 a piece. He just needed to get them out. They need to be sheared every 3 months, and he just couldn't get to it. So, I went to Bellevue, and my car broke down along the way, and we ended up having to spend $700 to get a new transmission, so it really wasn't as cheap as it could have been if my car hadn't broken down. However, I got these, I bought 2 rabbits, and they were enormous. They were 15 pounds, and their fiber was 6 inches long. Beautiful, calm, lovely rabbits. I didn't realize at the time just how much fiber they produced. Our first Angora rabbit was from High Desert Fiber Works in Oregon, and he was not as high quality. His fiber only got about 3 inches long, and his bone structure wasn't as nice, and he just wasn't as big of a rabbit. So just because they come registered doesn't mean that that's the nicest animal that's out there. That's not always what it means. But anyway, it turned out that I didn't understand the amount of fiber you get off of these rabbits. And this is from my black Angora. Can you see that? I'll try and show it to you. Can you see it? I'm going to tell the girls to turn that down real quick. I should not be able to hear that through the door. Girls, you turn that tape all the way down, or you may turn it off. That is not an acceptable volume. Sorry, guys. Anyway, So when I sheared that rabbit, I would get 3 of these completely full. And I just couldn't spin fast enough to keep up with it because I had 3 rabbits and I was clipping them every 3 months. I just couldn't use that much. And then we went and got bum lambs at the sheep experiment station, and I already had like 9 bags of Angoras built up. So I was like, I'm just going to sell the Angoras. I can't keep up with the fiber, and now I have a sheep. So long story short, I sold all of my Angoras, and just recently, as I've been doing my spinning and my knitting for the Kickstarter, it occurred to me that it would be nice to have a little bit more Angora around because I'm going to use it in the hats to make it soft. And it's so stinking cheap just to have a rabbit rather than having to spend $100 on fiber that's, you know, $100 on fiber. So, anyway, I went and called one of the ladies that I sold my rabbits to and asked her if she had any for sale, and she did. And so we're getting one. I prefer the black color. I just always have preferred colored fleeces to white fleeces. I love natural color. I do not like dyed color. I will always take a naturally colored fleece over a white one. And so, or over a dyed one. I don't like those colors unless they're a natural dye. So we're getting a black one. He's going to cost me $125, but there won't be any actual money exchanged. We have worked out a trade between us so that, which I love trading because I don't have the money to spend that much money on a rabbit. And so we have the Angora coming, and if you're wanting to be a backyard farmer and you want to be able to create your own fiber, this is the way to go. Now, if there was ever an emergency, an economic problem, you could take your fiber and make socks. You could take your fiber and make gloves. You could take your fiber and make hats. You can make anything with this fiber. And even though it's not durable like wool from a sheep, it's still fiber, and it's still a way to make some kind of textile for personal use, and it's 10 times warmer than sheep wool, so it would keep your feet very, very warm. So if you're really big into the emergency preparedness type thing, this would, you know, this is something to try. The other thing that I'm thinking about and that we're looking into is getting quail, because even if you're just in a studio apartment, if you have a closet, you could keep quail in the closet and just keep things really clean, and you would have eggs every day. And you'd be able to forage for their food. And one lady that I saw, she did quail and she did the sprouted grains. And anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is the sky is the limit on the way that you do it. But there's always a way to do it. It's all about what is it you want. And the difference in all of that is, do you have it written down? The difference between a dream and reality is you wrote reality down. What you really, really, really want, you wrote it down. And then you started researching it and investigating, what small bit can I do now? And this is my own personal faith, my own personal testimony of the way that the world and God works, is that when you start to show momentum and willingness, windows will open for you so that you will attain what it is you want, that is a good, righteous desire of your heart. And if you show that you're moving, you know, okay, so here's, to begin momentum is the hardest part. Once you have attained some momentum, it is much, much easier just to maintain that momentum than it is to try and push something from a stopped position. And I think that's kind of how God works, is that when He sees you and that you have momentum, He can then point you in the right direction and you will get there because you're moving. It's when you're in a standstill and you're just like, well, I can't get it all perfect now and I can't do all of it, so I may not as well do any of it. It's that situation where it's hard for God to move you, because faith means action, even if it's just tiny action. So anyway, I hope that was helpful for you guys, and go